So what exactly happened after all of Washington's woes? The first few years of the territory's history were embroiled in chaos, with battles and massacres along every border between whites and natives. Washington's mountain valley was now open for settlement by whites, and the Coeur d'Alene were placed on a small reservation that was a fraction of the size of their former lands. They would suffer from disease and malnutrition in the coming generations, reducing their numbers. After his loss at the Battle of Pine Creek, Colonel Steptoe was sent on sick leave. He resigned from the military due to poor health 4 months after the start of the Civil War. 4 years later, he died at the age of 49. General Newman Clark, who was the head of the Army Department of the Pacific, would split the department in two and take lead of the Department of California. He died in 1860, roughly 2 years after the end of the Coeur d'Alene War and less than a year before the starting of the American Civil War. General Wool, the former general of the Department of the Pacific, would go on to fight for the Union in the Civil War. He took the city of Norfolk, Virginia from the Confederates. Because of this, President Lincoln promoted him to Major General, only the 23rd man to achieve the rank since the Army's creation in 1791. After the Battle of Gettysburg, he secured and became de facto military leader of New York City after the draft riots leveled much of the town. Afterward, he was forced into retirement by President Lincoln under much protest by Wool. He was the oldest general to serve in the Civil War on either side. He continued to send letters to Presidents Johnson and Grant for reinstatement, but no avail. He served in the Army for 51 years, retired for 5, and died in 1869. Territorial Governor Isaac Stevens was commissioned in the Army after the Civil War began. He was promoted from colonel to brigadier general after fighting in the siege of Fort Pulaski, the Battle of Secessionville, and the Second Battle of Bull Run. He was killed in action while charging with his troops at the Battle of Chantilly a year into the war. He was struck in the temple by a bullet and killed instantly. Leschi had quite a legacy after his execution for the Puget Sound War. Since his death, a Seattle neighborhood, several parks, 2 schools, streets in 5 cities, a mount trading site at an army base, and a fireboat for the Seattle Fire Department have been named after him. In 2004, both houses of the Washington State Legislature passed resolutions that Leschi was wrongfully convicted and executed. In December of that year, Chief Leschi was exonerated by unanimous vote by a historical vote of inquiry. Kamiakin, much like the Lakota war chief's Sitting Bull, refused to surrender to the United States and escaped and lived in exile in Canada. Afterward, he lived among the Flathead tribe east of the Rockies in Montana. He was allowed to return to Washington in 1860, roughly 2 years after the Battle of Spokane Plains. He was offered food and blankets on 2 occasions by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, of which he refused. He lived in Washington for 17 years until his death in 1877 at 77 years old. He outlived all other major leaders of the Washington Territorial Wars. He's most interesting to me because he had an innate ability to unify tribes of many languages that were not prone to central leadership. I put him on par with Sitting Bull or even William Wallace of Scotland. All 3 were unifying populist underdogs that fought against huge powers, occasionally winning against great odds. All 3 lost, but are not forgotten. So, returning back to my trip, I'm on my way to Washington's southeastern reaches, which hold some of the most fertile lands in the United States, the Palouse region. For the next few episodes, I'll be in the inland northwest. So Jeremy's telling me that the fuse might have blown when it melted and shorted. He says that's a common thing, so he's going to grab something to open her up, and then he's going to grab some fuses so that we can get this guy set for the road. I mean, I could do this later, but it's better now before I hit the road, and I just don't like the idea of not having a charger at all, ever. I'm moving in between places at the moment where I could have them charged, but I just want to get it over with while I'm here and while we're doing it. I unpacked the whole thing just so we could get the seat off and take a look inside. Not that bad. So it took a little bit of work, but it looks like we got it going. They set me up with a new fuse, like one of them already broke, and then they set me up with 2 fuses and some zip lines, so then I can get everything hooked up and attached. So it will not drape down onto the exhaust any longer, causing more frickin' mayhem. I'm gonna hit the road now. Cascade told me to go to a city called Vantage, and then from there I could take 26 in. He said it's much more scenic and it's a much better ride. So I'll be there probably, it's like, I don't know, 10:30 now, so I'll probably end up being there by like 5 maybe. It's like a 4 or 5 hour ride. I gotta cross the whole state. So yeah, let's hit the road.